Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you, ladies, from wherever you're coming in. We've got from Perth right through to Victoria, and we've got some Queenslanders coming in to join us as well today. So welcome to the BWA Financial Wellbeing webinar. We have the fabulous Kathryn Dixon from IOOF presenting to us today, and we're going to have a bit of a different take on financial wellbeing. So it's going to be a really great deep dive into some of the insights that Kathryn has in relation to, what we can do as employers in regard to financial literacy development for our people as well. So before I start, I will actually like to do an acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge that we're meeting on sacred and sovereign Indigenous land. It's been lived, danced and celebrated on for over 120,000 continuous years, and we pay our respects to all Indigenous elders past, present and emerging, and we celebrate our Indigenous sisters in business. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Lynn Hawkins. I'm the Director of Business Women Australia and a co-founder. I also have my own practice called Hawkins Marketing Consulting, and I have 30 years background in strategy and business development. So I've been a mentor with UWA careers for, I think it's nearly 8 years now. And so community means a lot to me. So the opportunity to be able to be a part of the leadership team of Business Women Australia has been a real privilege. And I've certainly loved the opportunity to meet women all around the nation. It's been fabulous. I just love it. It's become the more important part of my life. I sort of was very reluctantly taking on this role when my co-founder retired, and I had to step up and put my big girl pants on and take more of a front-facing role, and I've really loved it. Actually, I've really found the opportunities it's given to me and to our fellow members, some fantastic opportunities to meet women all around Australia. Yeah, there's a little bit there about my scuba diving. Thanks, Bridge, adding that in. Haven't had the chance to do much scuba diving lately, but looking forward to getting back out in the water. So the BWA vision is to be a place where everyone's valued and we can all work together to contribute a greater good in business, in our communities, in our lives. So we're a very collaborative community, and we want to demonstrate a new way of being true co-creators, working together to actually bring the Business Women Australia brand to life, achieving that mission of helping each other achieve our goals and our dreams, to build a network of influence and to create opportunities to really improve the visibility of business women in Australia. We've not just entrepreneurs and business owners, but we've also got a lot of directors, executives, managers with organisations all around Australia. We've got a lot of professionals and consultants within our community, C-suite women in CEO roles, CIO roles, CFO roles, and of course women on boards, including private boards, not-for-profit and public boards, leaders and emerging leaders, including some gorgeous students now with our partnership with Torrens University. We've got 5 areas that we focus on in development. First and foremost, leadership. That's very important to us, that we want to create opportunities for female leaders to be seen and to demonstrate their leadership and to develop leadership skills needed in this new age of working. Business improvement is another key area of our development. Personal growth, influence and profile building, and of course connecting. When we got together and started Business Women Australia, we really focused on what the values would be that we would demonstrate by our behaviour, and we spent quite a lot of time working with our members across the board in terms of really looking at what was important to our community. Collaboration is the one that really comes out as the big one for us, because we really do work with our members. We don't come up with a sort of a series of events that we decide to roll out. We actually work with our premium level members and collaborate with them to help raise their profile, connect them to their key markets, and to really expose, their expertise and their knowledge in the wider business community. Positive energy and optimism is another one of my favourite values. Anyone who knows me knows I have loads of energy and I'm a very optimistic person. glass half full all the time, most of the time anyway. And the benefits of joining is, of course, connections and friendships have been one of the biggest things about our community. It's quite often what I call the forgotten level of women, the executive women who are already pretty successful, the women business owners who are scaling and growing their businesses. And we identified that, you know, across sectors and across industries, we weren't being particularly well looked after. There's lots of incubators, lots of opportunities for startups, plenty of industry-based women in type communities, women in mining, and we do things with women in mining, women in finance, women in law, but to have something that was cross professions, cross sectors, cross states, we've really enjoyed creating that community and being able to work with and connect with other organisations as well. So we're a non-competitive community. We've done some wonderful things with the Governance Institute, with HKBA, the Hong Kong Business Association, British Chamber of Commerce, various groups around Australia. We're really open to doing things together. During COVID, we were very busy. We actually negotiated a fantastic partnership with Torrens University, and we're able to bring to our members, I think there's something like 35, 36 free courses from Torrens University. They're normally people have to pay for these, and they're available to our community for free, and they range from all sorts of exciting and sort of topical courses, you know, from artificial intelligence through to doing difficult conversations, leveraging the power of the 21st century consumers, all sorts of fantastic courses. I've been working my way through them. So we're really excited to have been able to offer this opportunity to our members, as well as we announced a scholarship. Kylie Clark, one of our members in New South Wales, actually won the pitch for a fully paid MBA, which she started this semester, and we really wish her all the best. It's amazing seeing her being able to achieve her dreams and pursue her qualification for her MBA. We'll be launching another scholarship next year, and we also have an opportunity for all our members, if they are interested in any of Torrens University courses, to apply for a 15% scholarship. So even if you don't get the fully paid 100% one, there's an opportunity for a 15% scholarship. For those of you who are busy on social, we have a LinkedIn group. We'd love you to join us. You don't have to be a financial member of Business Women Australia. That group is for women in Australia who are involved in any kind of business pursuit or have or are employed in business. So that group, you know, we have 3,000 plus members in there. It's a really great way to see what kind of things are on. People promote their workshops, people share articles. It's a great one. Follow us on our company page on LinkedIn. We also have our website, of course, with our calendar of events. We have a public Facebook page. Again, we've got loads and loads of followers, and we put up all sorts of things there. We have a private group for our members on Facebook as well. We have a Twitter handle, and we're on Instagram. But we wouldn't be able to do what we do without our amazing partners. Kathy Smith and her team at Catco Enterprise look after our digital marketing, our website. We're constantly coming up with new things and new programs to launch. Our Lead the Future leadership program developed by the amazing Jessica Schubert from Intact Teams was launched this week. It started off, that's a 6-week intensive. Solo accounts, Donna Vincent's amazing. She does all our invoicing, looks after our books, deals with our accountant. Torrens University have been a fantastic partner. Not only have they given us all these amazing opportunities for our members, but they're a financial contributor to Business Women Australia, which really helps us pay our contracting team. 3 Drops, our favourite wine, of course, and we have other amazing venue partners and suppliers of knowledge and expertise there with us as well. Platinum Mix, Strategic Marketing, LG Accounting Solutions, Inspiration Source, Pauline Bright, Business Designer, and of course, Evolving Women, Cindy Turner. If you're not a member, we'd love you to join. If you've got any questions about which level's right for you, get in contact with me. I'm always looking for women who are collaborative and want to co-create and be a part of what we're trying to achieve here. and to actually help design what our knowledge sharing is going to be in 2021. We're looking at that right now. So if you've got any questions, if you've got any ideas, drop me a line, lynn@businesswomenaustralia.com.au. And everyone's welcome, whether they're a member or not, to join us online. We've got our Gold Coast think tank. Even if you're not in the Gold Coast, you might want to meet Lizzie Nelson. She's an absolute dynamo. She's going to be exposing the myths of business insurance on the 23rd of November. Lucky WA, we have the fantastic Kathy Smith, who's our chapter leader of the southern area and southern regions of WA, and she's got a banter by the sea in Bunbury. And then she's joining Sue Daly to run an open mic planning session for 2021 in the Mandurah Murray region. Back online on the 2nd of December, we've got Natasha Lee and Donna Vincent that are going to share cash flow tips. That'll be a good one for business owners. And on the 7th of December, back in person in West Leederville, we've got a roundtable with Becky Sagster, who's a marketing strategist, who's going to be giving some insights into websites, lead generation and engagement online. And Lucky Bunbury are going to be hosting our Christmas party on the 11th of December at the Old Coast Road Brewery. I will be there. So without further ado, I'd love to hand over to the fabulous Kathryn Dixon. Kathryn has been an amazing supporter of Business Women Australia for years. She was instrumental in negotiating our original national sponsorship with Shadforth Financial Group. That went for quite a few years. So Kathryn and I have collaborated on loads of things. She's not only a brilliant financial wellbeing expert, but she's a wonderful friend and she's a great lady. I'd like to hand over to Kathryn. She's now with IOOF, and she'll be able to explain sort of how her career has moved across to IOOF and give us some insights into what she believes that we need to be doing as employers, looking at developing financial literacy in our teams. Thank you very much, Kathryn. Over to you. I think you're on mute.
We're on mute, that helps. Okay, we'll just share my screen. So thank you for that welcome, Lynn. Really appreciate it. I will cover off as I'm talking through both to people who are listening today and for those who perhaps listen to this webinar later, a little bit about what we feel financial wellbeing is and some of the things that are important to people. So today I have to start with the obligatory disclaimer. I wouldn't work for a financial services company if I didn't need to just explain that everything that I talk about is general advice. So don't make any decisions based on anything you hear today. What I'm going to cover off today is a little bit about me. I'm going to talk about mental health during COVID and give some context about some of the issues behind mental health services in Australia. Overlay some of those stats that I'm going to give you with some of these studies that have been done in the advice industry, because all of these things come together to explain why financial wellbeing is important. And then finally, I'll give you just a couple of high-level approaches of some of the offerings or some of the areas that we touch upon and think are important for financial wellbeing. So the first one I'm going to talk about is about me. So talk about vulnerable. When I was writing this through, I thought, haven't shared this before. So Lynn, this is a safe environment. We'll go through that. So you've probably realised by now, I don't have an Australian accent. I've got a New Zealand accent. I was brought up in southern New Zealand, child of the 60s. So that probably says it all. I come from a family of one income, 4 kids who were in 9 years. So let's just say at times money wasn't exactly growing on trees. I come from a teaching background. Both my parents were teachers. Unsurprisingly then, education was really important. But financial education was all about learning by osmosis, and that's the best way I can describe it. I can still vividly remember the end of the week, Dad going to the bank with his cheque, and if he wasn't there by 3 o'clock, we had no money for the weekend. I can remember meals. Now, Mum was never a great cook, so I always thought that maybe she just didn't care about cooking, but Maybe in retrospect, as I've got older, I understand that there were financial constraints, and those weren't shared with us as children. I then stepped in at the ripe old age of 22. I became a stepmother. 24, a mother. We ran a very profitable consulting business in New Zealand. It did have an embarrassingly large household income that for a period of time I was very used to. In retrospect, I wish I'd spent some of that money more, but instead we had a husband who was very focused on working every possible day. So for a couple of years ahead, he would know where he would be every day. And again, that came from the background. His upbringing impacted on his financial understanding the same way mine did. Unsurprisingly, probably it was a little bit unsustainable. And then I found myself with 2 young children, 5 and 7, divorced and starting again. And it was at that stage that I realised, I actually don't really have a grasp of financial literacy as such. I think I know, but it was all driven and brought on by what my parents had told me. To add insult to injury, the extreme of going from an extremely high income to nil was frankly really stressful, really scary, and not a time I choose to think about too deeply now. A couple of false starts at a new career. Teachers College was not for me, I discovered after a month. I ended up buying a business, and owning and buying a business without a whole lot of financial support or knowledge behind you is a bit daunting. So Rodney Wayne salons, and I think you have them here in Australia, that was an interesting experience. I then moved into financial services. So I've been in financial services for about 20 years. I've worked as a trustee, both at a personal trustee level and at a corporate trustee level in both Australia and New Zealand. And about 7 years ago, I moved into Shadforth, which Lynn has mentioned. So just a couple of months or a few months ago, our division of Shadforth moved into IOOF, and we rebranded ourselves as IOOF Employee Solutions. It's where we're going to go and really build out and share the concept and thought leadership of financial well-being. So with all of that, you can see I've certainly seen financial uncertainty. I've experienced financial uncertainty and stress, and so often it is just a case of a bit of knowledge, a bit of tenacity, and you can help people get through that. So when the opportunity, as I said, financial well-being's become a real buzzword lately. It's very much associated often with product as opposed to the concepts and the skills. So here's been an opportunity to jump out and start the conversation. So none of us are going to be surprised with some of the figures that I'm going to show you, although they are a little bit daunting when you actually see them. So you'll see there the reference to a MetLife survey. It's an employee benefits trends study, and I'll reference that a few times during the discussion, and I'll talk a little bit about the methodology of it shortly. But the headlines that we're seeing are the headlines that we're seeing in the paper. This survey has just been completed during late August, early September of this year. It's just been released a couple of weeks ago. And in fact, tomorrow, MetLife are going to be delivering a lot more of the detail into it. So the session's perhaps come a little bit early in that regard. But look, a third of people's mental health declined during COVID. A third have felt isolated. 1 in 3, only 1 in 3 have reached out for help. And interestingly, there's a strong link between being unemployed or fearing your job loss. And of course, you feel much better, your health and well-being is better for those that eat well, sleep well, and know that they have some security in their jobs. Again, here are some stats that we're not going to go through. They've come from the Australian Institute of Health. Really just indicating the differences and the increases in expenditure that we're seeing required for mental health. So from 5.7% in 2008 to 9 to 10.6% of the population received Medicare subsidised mental health specific services in that 2018-19 year. you look over at expenditure on the right-hand side, it's gone from 3.1 billion in 1992 through to 9.9 billion in the 2017-18 year. You can only imagine what we're going to see coming out in the next year or two. So again, we've got those overlay there, but again, look at the emergency department service rates. It's across the country. It's not, yes, okay, Northern Territory there is showing higher, but everywhere we've seen increases in mental health related encounters since 2006 and 7. We've seen facilities providing care in 2017-18 is 1655. Just the other day, the number of governments that are actually now increasing their expenditure into mental health services is just incredible to watch. So we'll see all of those numbers increase. And again, there's only another page of these. 61,000 days of same-day care provided by public hospitals, you know, about 3 or 4 times that by private hospitals, overnight care. And the really scary one over here is the number of physical restraint. It's an indicative thing, but it shows you just how high those are. So I talked about this MetLife survey, and here are some of the latest figures out of it. So to put it in context, MetLife run this survey here in Australia. It follows very closely along one that they've been delivering in the US for a number of years. So it's based on the same sort of trends, same sort of questions that they're asking, but it's localised for the Australian environment. So this year, it was run between the 25th of August and the 11th of September. They talked to 339 employer respondents, and they were people who had benefit decision-making capabilities, or they were influencers. And they also spoke to 1,037 employee respondents. And so they were a mix of part-time and full-time employees. And there was they were all Australian-based companies. They all had more than 2 employees, and some of them were very much bigger than that. And they were a representative sample across age, gender, etc. So I think what's the really important thing out of this page is 27% of employees saying they're most concerned about their financial health. 5 in 10 of them say they're not being offered financial health support. Now, what financial health support means to them might differ from one to the other, but 4 in 10 Australians are claiming that financial health concerns are the main driver of their mental health. Then we look at, 78%, it's not on this page, but 78% of individuals are saying they're stressed. And again, they're more stressed than they were before COVID-19. Interestingly, 57% say support received from their employer during the period of the last few months has made them more loyal. So it shows you that things like this make a difference to an employer. So those are some of the stats that we've seen there. There's been a number of surveys done within the advice industry as well, which overlay this type of information. So the Royal Commission into Financial Services is something that we probably all have heard about over the last few years. Some of the outcomes of that have been, 30% of Australians considered getting advice. Only 12% received it. 25% considered they'd get advice in the next 12 months. Overall, though, there's been a net decline of advisors. The reason for this has been that advisors are finding that the compliance requirements are just getting so onerous, so difficult. It's a very difficult industry to be a financial advisor and operate in. So it makes it hard for people to access. Again, the surveys there showed some of the reasons people didn't access advice. The ones that I find most interested in this are the people who say there's no need and the people who don't see any value. So there's nearly 50% there. Some of the reason is you don't know what you don't know. And so I find those 2 figures quite scary in that regard. At IOOF, we're working on the too expensive in the sense of we're really aiming to try and make advice more approachable and more accessible for every individual. And again, 90% of individuals self-serve. So again, it's that reflection on what don't they know. We need to make sure people become aware and understand that there is somewhere that they can look, and somewhere they can go. At the moment, they're looking at online calculators, robo-advisors, and peer things. The people that want to access advice don't necessarily know the difference advice can make. And again, some key themes that come out. Again, probably no surprises to anybody: budgeting and cash flow, managing debt, and the psychological barriers. I think the one thing that's really important in there is 86% of Australians don't know how much money they're spending every month. 59% of people with a home loan don't know that they've got the best deal. They don't, and 28% of, only 28% of borrowers have actually stress tested their loans. So people aren't actually asking the questions because they don't know how to, maybe they don't know how to ask the questions, or they don't feel comfortable about asking the questions. But again, across those variety of surveys, 62% of the population feel anxious. What are they going to do? How are they going to fix the issue? And 42% have said they're embarrassed by their personal debt. Now, if we look at this busy looking circle, if you're looking and living in the advice industry, the whole way of describing financial well-being is that there are three outcomes you're looking for. It's you want to feel in control, you want to feel secure, and you want to feel comfortable. And just around there, there's some little white boxes that show that. But historically, there are four key areas that underpin all that. And it's the financial capability. And again, that's having some knowledge and understanding what your behaviours are and why they're moving that way. It's understanding the attributes of financial inclusion. So again, often age, gender, employment and education impact on whether you feel able or willing to access some knowledge, some advice. And of course, income savings, all of those things make a difference. And these, according to these surveys, are some of the reasons or some of the impediments. And again, we're looking at, in these impediments, thinking about my finances is overwhelming. I've got a lack of information and tools. I don't have the skills to improve my finances, or it's too difficult to understand. That's a huge proportion of the 100%. And on the other end, we just go, we're not saving enough, or we're not learning enough about finance. So again, there's this disconnect. There's the lack of knowledge. The easy regret is perhaps to say, we just aren't saving enough. And then just to top it all off, just to confuse everything, there's such a wealth of change in financial services. So everything's going digital. There's certainly the afterpay is causing more and more issues for individuals. And the banking apps are appearing left, right and centre. It's an overwhelming place to be at the moment. And so the outcome is, 34% of Australians are embarrassed by their financial habits. There's 6 million houses with mortgages attached to them. Failing to budget is the #1 regret. So people are asking us to understand me. Now, this is an interesting, and it's a busy slide, and we're not going to go through it. And you may agree or disagree to a lesser or greater degree with some of the comments made. But the facts are that women, some of the standard recognition is that women have lower financial knowledge and literacy. The differences in super balances of men and women emerge early in their careers, worsen across the life. It leaves women inclined to feel less confident about their ability to manage finances. References back to what I talked about at the start. Women are more worried about their current financial situation, and women more than men are overwhelmed by thoughts of their finances. So what do? There is interventions in improving financial literacy. Over time, that'll improve the balances of both men and women. Some of these things are across both men and women. Interventions could be expected to narrow the gap. More knowledge doesn't automatically mean change behaviour. So all of these are things that we need to think about. So one of the things that we've been working on at IOOF and Shadforth before that, in fact, is in terms of making a difference and building a solution. So I talked earlier about moving out of Shadforth into IOOF. Within that, we work within three main areas. So superannuation, which has historically been the source of information for people about financial education. As the superannuation environment has changed and choices come into it, there are less and less individuals that are necessarily or getting that information or their financial knowledge through the traditional superannuation route. And that's one of the reasons that we've developed the Financial Wellbeing Program. So what is financial wellbeing? So for us, and it's the thought we'd like to put in front of everybody, is financial wellbeing isn't about a dollar figure. It's not about having $1 million in the bank when you retire, or 500,000 or 4 investment properties, or whatever the case might be. It's about addressing the root issues and reducing stress through understanding and some knowledge. It's a psychological state more than anything else. And when an individual knows why they're doing something and has some understanding and knows where to look for the tools, all those money decisions are nothing like as scary as they were. So during the course of the COVID-19 crisis, we've actually delivered a whole lot of financial wellbeing sessions to organisations throughout Australia. We've really been focusing on just providing some information at that time. So some of it's revolved around government grants, and we've given them some basic tools to try and make life easier. We've found that the outcome has been that people have found it reassuring to hear that this isn't just restricted to them. Everybody feels in a similar position and needs to look at this. When we're talking to an employer, here are some stats that we're in the process of just updating at the moment. But again, 1 in 2 Australians, financial stress is the leading cause of stress. Presenteeism and absenteeism are a huge cost to the industry, and nobody who owns a business would be surprised at that. But the surprising one is, just how many hours a week of productive work are lost. Because what your employee is doing is stressing about paying the next bill, or how they're going to pay the bill, or they're trying to negotiate with their bank. And again, we're going to see some more of these appear in the coming months and years. Now, this is a 2019 survey that was MetLife. And again, the figures are similar, but the important thing is that employees are saying that financial tools to help them understand and gain confidence and achieve their financial goals is something that they value and they find important. So we go to how do we actually frame financial wellbeing positively? And I guess the thing there is to think about, there's lots of changes happening. So again, in terms of the mental health during COVID, well, this is the MetLife survey again. These are things that employees are saying are important to them. Now, we're all dealing with flexible working arrangements, or it's only flexible if you have a choice, but if you're in Melbourne, you don't have a choice yet. Working from home policies, mental wellness. So again, some of this financial wellbeing aspect comes into it. And in fact, earlier today, I was just reading a survey that came off from a HR company, and it was talking about the importance of employers really understanding that there's various pillars in terms of a wellness program for their employees. It's not restricted just to the physical mind, the mental well-being, the resilience. There are things like the financial pillars as well. And again, just some more stats there. 38% of employees have increased their employee benefits during COVID, which is interesting in itself. So what are the things that we think are an important thing for people to consider when they're talking about financial wellbeing? it's really about looking at what is in your mind. And again, I talked at the beginning about I learned so many of my financial education, financial knowledge skills from my parents. How many of you have heard the phrase, money doesn't grow on trees? I'm old enough to remember money with paper money. So in my mind, it did grow on trees. But yeah, you can't take it with you. During the program, we challenge individuals with what is the perception of money? What does it mean to you? Does it mean security? Is it the root of all evil? Have you seen bad things happen because of money? And again, working in a trustee industry, I've certainly seen bad things happen because of money. We then talk to people and talk about budgeting. You know, have a think about what are the flows? What can you change? What levers can you pull? What can you control? What can't you control? We encourage them to actually look at their expenses and download their transaction history. It's a scary concept. I try to avoid looking at it whenever I can, but it's one of those things that if you actually can do that and make it a bit of a family discussion, you can actually sometimes look and identify areas that maybe you have got some opportunity to change. You can decide what is discretionary. Is that extra 5 cups of coffee every day or whatever the case might be really necessary? Can you reduce it to 4? The other thing that we challenge people with and we challenge you to think about is measuring things, understanding. So we all, you know, see people out there with their Fitbits. They're measuring those darn 10,000 steps. If you take that Fitbit off, well, in my case is that I'm sure I do half the distance, but convince myself it's 10,000 steps because it always seems a lot further when I actually have the Fitbit on my wrist. And this money is just the same. If you're actually keeping an eye on it, making it part of the discussion point, it makes a difference. The other thing that we talk about is, you know, what's your time worth? Again, here's a lazy tax, $11.6 billion in additional costs every year, simply by not actually looking around for the best deal. Now, sometimes that can be a bit interesting, a bit daunting, but, you know, 50% of people in this particular study found, or they thought they would actually switch and shop around, but actually only 25% did something because it was just a bit much effort. So those are the reasons we don't switch, you know, the effort. So what was the figure? 37% of people said, oh, it's just too hard. 36% thought, oh, it'd be too expensive to switch. We'd get charged to switch. 14% thought that they were being treated particularly carefully and being loved by the provider, so they'd stay there. 13% didn't really have any knowledge, and well, you know, the rest, 13% said, well, they're all the same. It's a bit like the banks. It's really hard to judge a red bank, white bank, blue bank. They all do roughly the same thing. Sometimes it's just too hard to understand what the difference is. However, what that same survey found is just the value of spending a little bit of time to do all these things can save you so much money. So in this particular case, you know, 649 million was saved in home loans. Grocery bills, 593 million was saved. 393, or just on 394 million, saved through switching the energy supplier. All of these add up, and those are the sorts of things that we talk about and think that people need to be considering when they're thinking about their financial well-being. We also put this busy chart up. It's a scary chart, and the first time I saw it, I thought nobody can have, you know, a situation like that. But the more and more that I've talked to people about financial well-being, the more and more I understand that yes, this indeed is a very common situation. So one of the things we talk about people is simply simplifying. Doesn't that look much nicer and much easier to deal with than that? And again, it's knowledge, it's education, it's just taking the time to actually look at your situation and make a difference. So when we go then, we've taken through some short, quick fixes that people can look at. We then go, okay, you need to look at things in the medium term. So some of the things we talk about in this part of our financial wellbeing is staying on track with your super. Some of the basic things: what's your fees? What's your insurance premiums? Do you need all the insurance premiums you're paying for? What's the performance like? There's a whole range of things. Are you able to contribute more to your super? Are you controlling and managing things well? We focus on investments and markets. We actually provide tools for people to have a conversation, and we encourage people to have a conversation with other people. Again, go back to what I said at the start. For me, a learned behaviour meant those conversations weren't had. Now we're trying to get to a much more healthy environment where people have conversations and understand what their situations are. And of course, technology has made life much easier to deal with that as well. The other part that we've been dealing with lately in terms of financial wellbeing has been making sure that people understand what other information is available out there, particularly as it relates to government benefits. So making all of these things available to employees or to yourselves as individuals is important. Another aspect that we touch upon and think is important is that people need to separate emotions from investing. What we're seeing here is at the very, very top, people investing, they get a bit nervous, they sell out of the market, then they get all optimistic and keen again. I have an abiding memory of my grandmother who, well, she would be 80 at the time, but it happened for many years. She would listen to the stock market news with religious intensity every day. At 12 o'clock it would come. And you could guarantee that if the share market had gone down, she sold shares. And if the share market went up or there was positive things about someone else, she would go and buy. So she was doing the exact opposite to what you should do. So it's reacting to current market conditions. They do make poor investment decisions. So again, here's financial wellbeing, is understanding and gaining some knowledge here. Some of the things that you think about for the future are things like you're building on your basic knowledge, and it's around cash flow. And I'll show you a tool that we suggest that people access. It's creating a financial future where everybody is working together, and it's making sure that risk management is reviewed. So again, here's insurance. Insurance cover is really important, but your insurance needs change during the lifetime of an individual. And again, a financial wellbeing program is about understanding why those needs change and when they might change. So what this graph is saying is there's often a funding gap at the outset, at the early ages, where perhaps you've got a lot of debt, and you cover that with insurance. As you get through your life, becomes the time that maybe you don't actually need to have so much insurance cover, so you can reduce it. Others might choose to actually create an estate and a legacy with it. It all is very dependent on an individual's situation. The other thing is just understanding who gets who when you do die. Life insurance is really self-explanatory, but it's understanding the ways in which the other insurances all play into one another and all have their individual parts. That's an important part that people need to become aware of as well. And then another tool that's a really useful tool for people to use is what's called the Wealth Report. It's an online tool, so it can be a wee bit daunting when you go in and you're filling in some details. Name, rank, serial number, what you live, where you live, and it then comes out with a report that shows your net worth. And so during the course of the whole program, it's focusing on, and we're reminding people to focus on things that you can impact, things you can do, and things you can control. There are things outside your control that you're never going to be able to do anything to. And then that is my end of Around the Tracks with Financial Wellbeing as my voice gets out. So apologies for that. So Lynn, over to you.
Thanks, Kathryn. That's such an in-depth insight into what's happening in Australia pre-COVID and post-COVID. I'm interested in your thoughts about the amount and the percentage, or the behaviour of Australians who were offered the opportunity to access this super as a part of the stimulus program. You know, what are your thoughts about that? And you know,
it's been a really interesting part it's been a really interesting thing to see. So as part of when we've been delivering presentations or webinars to individuals, that has been one aspect of some of the government initiatives that we've talked about. Increasingly, as I've spoken to various superannuation providers, so the likes of the platform, in terms of, say, you know, call it BT, call it CFS, call it any of the platforms, there has been considerably more call on those early access to super than perhaps you need. And then when you talk to the employers afterwards, they don't know. No, our staff didn't have reduced hours. Our staff didn't have jobs cut. So there's been a degree of people perhaps accessing super. They've been signing off saying that they meet all these criteria, but they actually haven't. So the ATO is now starting to audit. So I think that's where the interesting outcome will be once they get through that process and discover, well, yeah, there were people that haven't. The other thing we saw a lot of was people, and again, referencing that grandmother's effort, selling out of super or changing their investments to cash. So the moment they changed to cash, they'd lost everything. So in terms of benefits. So all of those sorts of things will come home to roost. But in many ways, it's a little bit early to understand. Or not.
Yeah, it was a very interesting decision of the government to offer that, I thought, you know, in terms of, you know, the long-term ramifications.
It's the long-term ramifications are something that we're yet to see, and it'll be years away. But if you go back to, you know, some of those comments I made there in terms of, you know, what are my regrets, or, you know, the women's super in particular being lower. You know, you take 10,000 or 20,000 if you took 2 bites, and some of the people that, or some of the stories that I've heard of are that a lot of people took 2, and, you know, the second time they went back for the full 10. So yeah, that makes a huge hole.
Yeah.
In the future.
With some of the larger employers, you know, that have got employees, are they giving their and what would be your advice? Are they giving their employees opportunities to come into, say, some group financial wellbeing kind of workshops where they learn some basics, and then offering them sort of the opportunity to do one-on-ones? What's the general kind of format?
Yeah, very much, and we are seeing a lot of interest at the moment in that, because it's an easy employee benefit that an employer can provide that has noticeable positive outcomes. Yeah. Particularly now that everybody's got used to webinars, it makes it far more feasible to deliver financial wellbeing sessions to a workforce, and it's just easier. The program we offer actually covers 4 fundamentals, so cash flow, budgeting and debt, superannuation, so superannuation is the vehicle, investments, and just understanding investments. So that's things like asset classes. What does it mean? What do they do? And again, the final one is estate planning and insurance. So it's protecting your wealth. What do you do with it at the end? So once people go through those, and often they will do those, and again, it depends on the employer. Some of them they want to do it every fortnight. But because we're providing tools for them to use and try and do things with, sometimes spanning it out a little bit further works really well. And then from that, they have an opportunity to have a meeting with an advisor. Now that's general advice. And again, it's empowering, it's providing support. That wealth report I talked about is a really powerful tool that we're making available to people or employers that use the financial wellbeing program, because it enables them to have access to it at any time. They can sit at home and do it because it's online, and they're doing it with their partner, their spouse, whatever, and they're having the conversations. They're having the conversations about what's important. And sometimes they're needing to, you've got, say, two parties to a relationship. They've come into that relationship with different beliefs and values and upbringings. And so sometimes there needs to be a compromise. And something like the wealth report lets them have that discussion and lets them look at it and go, okay, well, what levers can we pull? Do we need to pull? When do we do it? So yeah, it's been very interesting. And it's also a benefit that people, an employer can see an appreciable difference over time. Whereas if you perhaps have the fruit baskets, which again, if you're in the east coast of Australia, you're not having the fruit baskets at the moment. Those things are very short-term, one use, and away you go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think certainly when we first established Business Women Australia, we did a national survey with core data, and a lot of those issues were being raised way back then, and I just think it's fantastic that employers are really starting to recognise that they have the opportunity to really make a difference and help their employees, their teams, to become more financially literate and to be able to, alleviate some of the stresses that they're experiencing as a result of perhaps not understanding, really the simplicity of budgeting. It just makes such a massive difference. I loved the slide you shared that had the hub account and the different accounts. We've set that up at home in the last 18 months, and it's made a massive difference to our own accountability, to our own spending. Simon and I have our own separate fun accounts, so it's quite a debate when we go out, whose fun account is it coming out of? But it really is, it's made us more, aware of where we're spending our money. And we can see it all, so well organised with these, what we call our buckets.
Yep. And again, that's going back to, it's the basics and it's understanding. And for some of us, it's taken a lot longer than it should have. And others are coming through needing to learn those skills. And yeah, as I said, it's an easy, positive employee benefit that an employer can offer.
It's absolutely brilliant. So any employers who are interested in this, of course, we have this recorded. It will be going on to our YouTube channel. We're very keen for anyone to get in contact. We'll have Kathryn's contact details in our notes as well. So please contact Kathryn, make sure that you reach out to her, and she'll go through what the program is, and if there's any particular things that you want tailored, she might even be able to add that into the program. I'm sure that IOOF is capable of anything. And look, I really do encourage anyone to who's employing, teams that are hybrid teams or flexible workplace teams, or any teams, large or small. Here's an opportunity to really tap into improving the financial literacy of your people and helping them and becoming an employer of choice. I just think it's such a valuable thing, and so much more long-lasting than the fruit basket in the staff room. Although that's a good idea for health and wellbeing.
Okay, thanks.
Before we go, Kathryn, we can say goodbye to everyone else. Is there anyone who wants to ask a question? I'll just turn off the recording for a minute. If anyone wants a question, just let me know in the chat box. Before you go, Kathryn, I do want to do some fast fire questions. I have.
Oh dear.
Yeah. No questions in the chat box? No questions. So I'll keep the recording going. This is the bit of fun. This is the random bag.
Okay.
If you don't know what these questions are, I don't know what they are.
No.
You can say pass if you don't want to answer a question, because I never know.
Okay.
Okay.
So is this still being recorded?
This is being recorded. Yeah, because the only things we won't record are the questions that people wanted to ask you, but they can always contact you offline. There's no questions in the chat box. Heather's had to go. Okay. Have you ever had a favourite piece of clothing, and what was so special about it?
I have lots of favourite pieces of clothing, but unfortunately they all belong to a Dunedin designer. And so I couldn't actually name one of them. So there's the latest one.
That's a tough one for someone who's been in isolation for a while too. I certainly haven't had the chance to wear it.
I have got a lot of very nice clothes in the wardrobe that haven't seen daylight for a while. Yeah. Let's put it that way.
Okay, have you ever been involved in an unusual project or event?
No.
I bet if I apprised you with wine, I could get an answer to that one.
I can't think of anything that's unusual. Yeah.
Okay, when have you ever surprised yourself?
I think it's probably some of it is a work response to that. So one of the things that I did as part of a trustee role back when I worked for a trustee company in New Zealand was effectively project manage the delivery of a really big piece of work. It was overwhelming at the start, and it required lots of arms and tentacles in it, and we'd all underestimated the size of the job. And the resources that would be needed, but somehow I got it over the line.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah,
One little bit.
But
I don't know why that would have surprised you. Okay, the last one.
Oh, thank goodness
Tell
for
us
that.
about. You're so panicked by these because you haven't prepared anything.
Yeah, I'm very panicked by these. Thanks, Lynn.
I know, we do it to everyone now. Okay, tell us about an incident you have had with an animal, either a pet or otherwise.
Well, it's funny that you should say that, because my dear dog has cost the best part of $1,000 in the last 5 weeks. He went to have his injections. That was fine. He was perfect when he went to have his injections. 3 days later, there was a big lump in his side, which he'd brushed past a nice plant. So it was either a palm frond, a bougainvillea, or a rose. And because he's a double-coated dog, this barb went right in, and so that became nicely inflamed. So back at the vet 4 days later, got that sorted, $300 worth of antibiotics later, a shaven hole in the side of the dog, brought him home. Had to go back 3 days or 5 days later to be checked. The vet gave him another 5 days worth of antibiotics and anti-inflammatories, which he likes eating with camembert cheese, I might add, and said, oh, did you know his gums are red? What's he been eating? And I said, no, he's fine. Oh, I think he needs to come back and have his teeth cleaned and scaled. And if that fails, he's on to cortisone. So that was $450 for teeth and scale for a dog. So all I can say is I was really hoping he didn't, run out on the road or do anything after that. Yeah.
So has he got his own financial bucket?
He's rapidly needing it.
Well,
yeah, the best part of, yeah.
Thank you for playing. You're a good sport.
Yeah.
And you never know what's going to come up. You actually got off quite lightly. I think those are quite good questions. So thank you very much for being here today.
Thanks, Lynn. See ya.
And we'll catch up when you get back from New Zealand. Enjoy that wonderful time with your family. Oh, and you know what? I need some more photos. We need updates.
Okay, righto. See you then. Bye.
See you. Bye. Thanks, everyone. trying to stop this recording.